Hello and welcome. I'm Chris Worrall, I'm Fabian member, and I'm joined here today with Ian Murray. Ian has endorsements for his deputy leadership campaign from two former Labour Prime Ministers, Lord Alistair Darling, Ray Hattersley, Labour Movement for Europe, as well as the Bush Labour Movement. And we're going to be following a thread today of asking who Ian is, how he's got involved in politics, asking about what needs to be done about the scale of the challenge Labour's facing today, where he sees the party going, and why young Labour members should consider putting him down as their first preference. Ian, could you just give us a bit about who is Ian Murray and how you got involved in politics in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not the most well-known candidate in the race for deputy leader, and I'm really grateful for the young Fabians to provide these kind of platforms to talk to ordinary members and people that are interested in politics. Who am I? Well, you know, I am from a very working-class background. I was born in the West Hales housing estate in Edinburgh, which is like any other major housing estate across the UK, built in the 50s and 60s to have those slum clearances. I have an older brother. My mother and father lived there. My family was rocked in the mid-80s at the height of Thatcher's power. My father died at the age of 39. I was just 9 back then. And that was when Thatcher was talking about no such thing as society and all those kinds of issues. So that's what really shaped my politics. She had to work for 3 jobs, one being a bookie. I know you were talking about make a shop yourself. That's really what shaped it. I went to my local community school. I went to university at 16, mainly because inspirational teachers forced me to do it because there was nothing really much left for me at school. First in my family to do so. When I came out of university, I did a variety of jobs. I worked in the Royal Blind Asylum as a kitchen porter. I worked in pensions and finance, everybody who's from Edinburgh does. And then ended up running my own businesses, firstly in events, and then subsequent to that, I did festivals and I had my own pub and restaurant. Before I got elected, I was a City of Edinburgh councillor as well, running in tandem running my own business. So that's me in a nutshell of where I am. Somebody says, what's on your CV? It's just a hodgepodge of all sorts of stuff, which I think is quite useful for being an MP.
And how did you, throughout that journey, throughout your life, at what point did you get involved as whether it was a local council? How did you start door knocking? What was that journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, the journey, personal journey, was really that my entire family, going back generations, were all Labour. So they were never really party political, but it was Labour values. They always voted Labour. Our local MP was Malcolm Rifkind, the former Tory Foreign Secretary. So there was always politics running through the family, although not formal politics, till I went to university. And got involved in the Labour Club there, helped in the 1997 general election when we retired Malcolm Rifkind and brought in a Labour MP for Edinburgh Pentlands for the first time. I then ran the campaign in 2001 to help Linda Clark be re-elected as the MP. And then how did I get involved in formal politics? Well, I was the membership secretary of the North Pentlands branch in Edinburgh. Right. And it was traditional after the AGM to go out for a few drinks. And after 6 pints of cider, somebody said to me, "Do you want to stand for the council?" And I stupidly said yes. And a few weeks later, I was on the ballot paper and winning the seat that I didn't expect to win. And then I enjoyed being a councillor. You have much more power as being in government as a councillor than you are in the opposition benches now, the Commons. But when the seat became available to Edinburgh, I decided to go for it. And again, people didn't think we could win it, and we held on.
And then moving on to sort of what the scale, just to jump forward to today, what is the scale of the challenge that Labour Party faces right now?
Well, I mean, look, it's huge. And one of the main reasons I entered this deputy leadership contest is because all the other candidates, including many of the leadership candidates, either refused to acknowledge the scale of the challenge or didn't understand the scale of the challenge in front of the Labour Party. And everyone says, oh, we could never feel as if how we felt on the 13th of December again. Everybody says that. But how do we stop that from happening again? This is our 4th general election in a row that we've lost. We are going backwards. Our worst election result since 1935. I don't want to bore people with stats, but I just want to be clear about the scale of the challenge here and why Scotland is so important. Because if we only deliver one Scottish Labour MP at the next election, which we've done in 15 and 19, we're going to have to win 124 Tory seats in England and Wales. That means every single seat that's currently blue has to turn red on a 13% swing down to Jacob Rees-Mogg and North East Somerset. Now, to put that in context, Attlee's landslide victory of 1945 after the war was 9.2%, and Blair's landslide of 97 was just over 10, and that's 13. If we deliver 16 Scottish Labour MPs, the swing is still 11%. That's the scale of the challenge. And the even more sobering thing, and this should really send a shiver up anyone who cares about having a Labour government, if there's a 2% Tory swing, which in political terms is pretty small, their House of Commons majority at the next election would be 240. It's good night, it's lights off.
That's rather scary thought process to even contemplate that. We've only got one MP in Scotland today.
But the key thing for all of this, Chris, is that yes, we won 203 seats. Yes, it was probably slightly better than the shadow cabinet was presented with before the election. Yes, it was probably slightly better than some of the opinion polls. But those seats, of the 203 seats that we held, a lot of them are now marginal. And that's the problem here. It's not just about looking to the future to get more than 203, it's about making sure you don't go backwards.
What do we need to do to turn this around?
Well, look, we need to change the party. And the main reason and the main way to change the party is by listening to the public. Now, I've been all over the country, and I've said in one of my 5 pledges for deputy leader that one of the roles of deputy leader is to organise the party, but to then go out to the country. People talk about organiser in chief, they talk about campaigner in chief and all the rest of it for a deputy leader. Yes, that is absolutely correct. Of course, that's what a deputy leader does. But first of all, we have to be the listener in chief. And I want to go to the seats that we won, the seats that we lost, the seats that we might never even win, because that's really important as well. And listen to the Labour movement, but more crucially the public, of what they want from a future Labour government. And it's not about ditching our Labour values, quite the contrary. It's about enhancing our Labour values, rooting our policies in Labour values, but doing it on what communities want. I've been all over the country, and the most harrowing but sensible place that I went in terms of the message was Scunthorpe. In Lincolnshire, we used to have 6 out of the 6 MPs, we've now got none. We used to hold most of the councils, we now barely hold on to 1. And I went with Nick Bacon, who lost his seat, and I walked down the high street and I just asked people what they thought of the Labour Party. And they told us what you think they would tell us. Leadership, our position on the Constitution with regards to Brexit, and our manifesto. Now, those are the 3 big things that people are trying to talk about. They're the 3 pink elephants in the room, never mind 1 pink elephant, and we have to sort it. And if we don't sort it, people aren't going to vote for us again. Lifelong Labour voter in his late 60s had always voted Labour, his family had always voted Labour, started to well up when I asked him who voted for the election. He looked at Nick Dakin, he looked at me and he said, Tory for the first time. And I said, why? And he went, because in simple terms, Labour are supposed to give us the hope and aspiration of a more equal shake of the stick, and they weren't offering that.
And I said, what is the role of a deputy leader in helping turn that around? They've touched on leader, listener in chief, but for those young Fabian members, I understand like the role of the deputy that you're putting yourself forward. What do you see as the sort of platform that needs?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I mean, all the deputy leadership candidates have got plans. Mine's on my website, murrayfordeputy.co.uk. People can go and see that in detail. But basically, the way I see the deputy leadership role is essentially the CLP membership secretary, the CLP secretary and the CLP fundraiser, but at a national level.
Right.
And that's really what a deputy leader's post is. It's to support the leader in the shadow cabinet, but also to be a critical friend. And I think the other leadership contenders haven't really acknowledged that you have to be a critical friend, because I can't promise to be your deputy leader, the deputy leader of young Fabian members, the deputy leader of the membership, without saying that I'm going to have some difficult discussions with the leadership, with the shadow cabinet, with the party, that filter for the movement. So it's got to be that. It's got to be a campaigner. Now, everybody knows and has been how we campaign in Edinburgh South will see that I'm a campaigner now. I've held a seat that I should never have held.
Yeah.
In fact, I should never have won it in the first place. We hold it. There's great people doing great stuff all across the country. Let me just pick a couple of examples. Exeter with Ben Bradshaw, a seat that we probably should never hold. Kirkcaldy in Brighton, a seat that we took off the Tories, and he's now, the most well-loved person in Brighton. These are the kinds of organisational campaigners we should be talking to and finding out what they do, but doing that across the country. But it's also about the internal party workings. And the election just passed. Let's be quite clear about this, and I'm unapologetic about this. If you're face-fitted to leadership, you got the resources, regardless of whether or not you could win or not. That's ridiculous. No. We lost seats by 500, 600, 700, 800, and we had buses of people going through them to places we'll never win. That should never happen. So it is about that organisational role. It's about that campaigner role. It's about that listening role, and it's about the internal party role.
that you point to, like some of the fighters in the party, in those sort of marginal seats. And sort of moving on to what policy ideas, because young Fabians, everyone's got a penchant for interests of their own. But from your perspective, what policy ideas are at the heart of your deputy leadership campaign or stuff that you've worked on?
Well, look, the role of deputy leader isn't really to influence policy, but I understand that people want to know what you feel, who you are, what you think about things. And my whole platform's been talking about the future. So yes, there are big issues we have to deal with at the moment. My God, the biggest one at the moment is the biggest one we'll ever like to deal with in terms of how this virus plays out. But it's about, I want to see us talking about the future, and young Fabian members will understand that, because this is about artificial intelligence, it's about automation, it's about the future of technology, it's about the gig economy, it's about disruptive technologies, it's about how the world of work has to shape what it looks like in the future, it's about how our education system, both at primary, high school and beyond into further and higher education, is changed to deal with that future work. It's about climate change. It's about how we harness technology with regards to climate change. The other big thing about climate change, and why it's really important for young people, is that politicians like myself and old, crusty, difficult oil tanker institutions like Parliament need to learn from young people. We need to learn about how did young people get climate change to the top of the agenda, through the climate strikes, the Extinction Rebellions, through those kinds of issues. I want to find out what they tapped into to sort that. So this isn't about me having any of those answers. It's about asking people what answers they've got. My platform has to be about the future. What does Britain look like 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time, with all the big issues, including things like climate change and social care, the future of work, technology, and how all that fits together? The Labour movement have to be talking about it, because if we're not, nobody else will.
More. Where do you see the Labour Party going politically, if you were to be successful in your leadership? And with that, how do you get the regions to work together in that general direction?
Well, that's a great question, because I don't like these tags: left, right, Blairite, Brownite, Corbynite, all of that. I think that's a nonsense, and it's the kind of tags we give each other to help them feed that media beast, and I think it's wrong. But the main thing that the party would go to in terms of me being deputy leader is credibility. I think the single biggest thing the Labour Party can offer the country is credibility. Because if the Labour Party is seen as that credible alternative government, people will look at it as being that vehicle for being the hopes and dreams of young people and everybody in the country that thinks, well, I'm going to support Labour, not because I'm an ideologue or because I want to be in a protest movement, because I know that if I'm a Labour supporter and I can get Labour into power, Labour will be my vehicle for these big issues. Absolutely. Until we can prove to the country we can be that vehicle, why would people be on board with us? So it's about that credibility in the first instance. It's also about talking about the future, which I think is really important. And it's about the team. It's about a much wider team than what we've got at the moment. And it's about harnessing, it's not just about Parliament, it's about harnessing the talent of the whole of the movement and bringing all that together in a united fashion. That's got to be the order of the day. So these are the kind of things I think a party has to bring. A credible alternative government is the single biggest thing the Labour movement could do, I think, to get the country moving and to get a hearing for some of the stuff we'd like to do.
In the past, when has Labour succeeded before, and what do you think we can learn from that, take forward?
Well, I forgot to answer your question about the regions, because this is a really key part of why I entered the race and part of my 5-point plan. I wanted to set up the Labour campaign for Britain's future. As deputy leader, I think that's a big role that a deputy leader could take on. And the Labour campaign for Britain's future is quite simply about how Labour can win power, then give it away. Because the disconnect between politics isn't really a debate about the voting system, or a debate about whether you should scrap the House of Lords, or a debate about whether the House of Lords should move to York, or taking the brass plate of the Treasury to Newcastle. It's about taking power out of central government and even local government, and Scottish Parliament in particular, and giving it to local communities, and harnessing councillors, mayors, parish councillors, all of that resource at the most local level possible. The Labour campaign for Britain's future is essentially the modern way of what the Labour Party did in the mid-90s. Find out how we're going to govern the country in the modern world and get ready to implement it when you go into government. And it's about Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, but crucially the regions of England. who are the most, they have the least evolution, but I think the thirst for it is the most. And the biggest problem with that, of course, is the donut of the southeast when you remove London, because the other regions have a sort of homogeneous cultural, social and historic boundary. But what do you do about some of that? The Labour Party should do that now while it's in opposition. So that's what we need to do. And that feeds into your sort of second question about how Labour Party succeeded before. Because we gave the country hope and aspiration, I'm not sure we talked about that.
No.
And if I go back to the guy in Scunthorpe, we wrote, I mean, each individual manifesto policy was relatively popular in the public eye. But, and I say this all the time, and people criticise me for it, but I think it's a really important thing for people to think about. Don't take my word for it, just ask yourself the question. If anybody watching this, ask yourself the question tonight. If a manifesto was the third most popular text behind the Bible and the 2017 manifesto, why did it drive so many people to vote Tory? So just contemplate that. It's not some, as I've been accused, right-wing ultra-Blairite having a go at the Labour movement. This is about the public. This is what the public told us at the ballot box. So we need to have a credible policy platform. We need to have a credible party. And we need to learn. This is why it's so important that I had the backing of Blair and Brown and Hattersley and Elizabeth Smith, for instance, widow, because it's not about them as individuals. It's about them having gone through the experience of having done this before, realising the scale of the challenge of what has to be done for the future, and finding the deputy leadership candidate that they think could be able to do that. That's the key thing about those endorsements.
And it's very powerful, in my opinion. Just sort of touching on or segueing into when you've obviously been one of the most pro-European people's vote back in members of Parliament and the Labour Party, along with a few others. When do you think we should campaign to get back in the European Union?
Well, this has also been quite controversial because people are still sore about this, and people are actually quite glad that the issue of Brexit is diminished. It might not diminish for very long. Coronavirus might mean it diminishes for a lot longer. But the key thing here is that we've now left the European Union. And the reason I was so passionate about us remaining in the European Union is there's no better deal than the one we had. That's quite clear. It's not quite clear from people who are moaners like me, but the government shows that. Every government shown that. Every government analysis has shown that. And therefore, what we did back in 2017 at the general election was we said to people, look, you've given the government an instruction to leave the European Union. We will back that instruction on the basis that they take the least worst option, which is least damaging to our communities. When the government decided they weren't going to take that option, it was right for the Labour movement to then say, well, if you're not going to take that option, and you're going to take a much more damaging ideological right-wing Tory path, then it's right for you to go and affirm that with the British public. Now, it took a long time for the Labour Party to get there because we wanted to sit and be everything to everyone, but we ended up with Leavers thinking we're Remainers thinking we're Leavers. We got nowhere. And there's a Scot I know firmly that if you don't pick a side in constitutional affairs, you end up in a really bad place. So I think now, as we sit here today, we've got a transition period to the 31st of December when we effectively have left but haven't left. And therefore, over the next 12 months, as a Labour movement, we've got to set an incredibly high bar for what we expect on the things that we care passionately about: workers' rights, environmental protections, consumer rights, on security and safety of our people, on travel, on cooperation, on trade, on jobs. All of those things, we've got to set an incredibly high bar, because the government's promises that they've made throughout the course of the last 3 years can't be satisfied, and they're already rowing back on them as quickly as possible. So at the end of the transition period, the Labour movement are going to have to make a big decision about whether or not the path that the country is on is the right one in the national interest. And my view is that every single card should be left on the table, that high bar left on the table, and if needed, to turn over the card to campaign to be a member of the European Union again. Now, that might be a long way in the distance, but there is absolutely no way, given what we've been promised and what can be delivered and what can't be delivered, that we shouldn't leave that card on the table.
Agreed. Just moving on to a bit more about your experience on doorstep. I'm sure many young Fabian members have been on more recently, and some perhaps longer than others. But when have you been most embarrassed when knocking on the door?
Well, there's a very serious side to this, and there's a funny side to this too. But on the very serious side, I never envisaged in my entire life that I would knock on a door during a general election and meet a lifelong Labour voter who's not going to vote Labour because of anti-Semitism. And not just saying that, but physically, you could tell physically when you knock on someone's door and look in the whites of their eyes, they're telling you the truth. And have people say that and to vote for another party is heartbreaking for the party. So the anti-Semitism issue has to be sorted out. And I've taken, again, on my 5-point plan, I'm taking personal responsibility for this. I don't want an argument about systems or process. I just want it done, because the culture of the party with bullying, intimidation, harassment, anti-Semitism just has to stop, and that has to be the personal responsibility of the deputy leader to sort it. And I do say, and I have said right across the country, if it's not sorted, I'll resign because I'll have failed. So that's the big one. I'll not tell you the story about the naked woman that answered the door, which was quite an embarrassing moment. Or I could tell you the anecdote that, I mean, Fabian members do this all the time, so they'll appreciate this. But you're delivering leaflets and you go up to the door, and there's the opposition leaflets just hanging out ever so slightly. So you take it out, you put it in, and you put your own through. I was doing the Grange in my constituencies, very big villas, great big huge driveways. And it'd been raining for days, and I was walking up the driveway, sludging up this driveway in the dark, got to the front door, the light came on, and I looked behind me, and I hadn't been swidging over the mud or the grass. I'd been swidging over a newly concreted path with my feet all the way up. So I thought, what am I going to do here? I can't, I'm the MP. I can't be responsible for this. So I put the SNP leaflet out that I'd taken out the door from there, and I stuck that through. And thought, well, that's probably the best way of doing this. And then retraced my steps back out the door again. 3 embarrassing moments.
Yeah.
Timothy, like that.
Yeah,
I can see him there laughing.
And I suppose we've sort of touched on this throughout, but why should other young Labour members, as have I, put you down, or other Labour members who may not cast their ballot, or others that haven't had the opportunity to vote yet until those ballots drop, why should they put you down as their first preference?
Look, this is a difficult thing for me it's a difficult contest for me to enter, because I entered this contest by wanting to tell the truth, wanting to tell some home truths, wanting to be honest about the problems, and wanting to be honest about how we solved it. So a lot of my colleagues, a lot of MP colleagues, decided they would back me. I got support from right across the spectrum of the PLP and right across the country. And then Labour Party members up and down the country put me on the ballot paper. And they put me on the ballot paper because of my message of change. So if anybody wants the message of change, they know where to put the number 1. If anybody out there, when they're filling out the ballot paper, doesn't think the Labour Party has to change, or doesn't think, or thinks they're on the right track, or thinks that an 80-seat Conservative majority with a 2% swing could be 240, or the bullying, harassment, the culture in the party, anti-Semitism is all fine, then there's 4 other continuity candidates they can support. Now, I'm not slagging off my opponents in this, because we've all got on really well. Everyone's got their own story to tell. Everyone's got their policy platform and their organisational platform they're standing on. But the word change is on the ballot paper next to my name. The word continuity is on the ballot paper next to theirs. And, it's pretty clear the scale of the challenge. It's pretty clear that the role of a deputy leader is to sort out the party and therefore listen to the country. And it's pretty clear that medicine is going to have to be taken. It's an incredibly difficult thing for me to win the deputy race. But I needed to get Scotland on the agenda, which is now on it. I needed to get the word change on the ballot paper, which is now on it. People know if they want change, you've got to vote for it.
Right. We've had a few quick questions just come through from the viewers. One is more in depth around how do we tackle the SNP in Scotland. The first one, second one, discussing more about your understanding and approach to the recent corona outbreak, and another one from Timothy is how will you increase the participation of disabled people in elected positions within the party, in local government, and in Parliament? And would you consider amending election procedures to include positive discrimination.
Yeah, can I start with Timothy's first? Was it Timothy that's on there? Just shake your head if it was Timothy. I think
Yes, hello.
You're waving. Thank you for that. This is the reason that I'm able to interact with Timothy, of course, on this Zoom call is because we're using Zoom, which partially answers your question, Timothy, about how we get much more involvement of people who, not just disabled people, but also people with caring responsibilities, parents who've got young kids. You know, going to a CLP meeting, it really wants to spend 45 minutes on matters arising when you can't access the building, when you've got to be there. And one of the biggest frustrations of this deputy leadership and leadership contest for that reason was if you were disabled and couldn't turn up at a particular point, at a particular date, you didn't even get an opportunity to nominate. And that, at a very basic level, something we have to sort. So we should be harnessing some of these technologies. We should be making sure that we listen to the disabled organisations. I did a Zoom call with Disability Labour. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't answer any of their questions for a simple reason, because it shouldn't be me dictating what needs to happen. I want disabled groups, carers, parents to tell us what we need to do, get people much more involved. Because I don't know, and therefore people need to tell us so we can organise it. In terms of elected office, we need much more financial support. I think we should introduce job sharing. I think the all-women shortlists have worked very well, and I think we could introduce and extend those to people that have not just disabilities, which is very important, but BAME and also carers and
the Equalities Act forbids it.
Really, really important for us to do that, and we don't do it as a party. And that's at all levels, from council through to just being an office bearer at a CLP, all the way up to Parliament. One of my good friends was Anne Begg, who you might remember from Aberdeen South, who was the very first properly wheelchair-bound disabled MP, who found it incredibly difficult. It was a marvellous job, and she got all the support required to do the job, and we need to make sure that support goes to people who want to do that job as well. Parliament shouldn't be, and any elected office shouldn't be an exclusion for anyone of whatever background and whatever disability or otherwise. Coronavirus is huge, and the big thing out there is just to say to people, look, this is no government conspiracy. You know, I've got no love for the UK or Scottish government in terms of their politics, in terms of the parties they represent, but they've got to be given the space to do the job. And if I could just refer everyone, there's a statement still going on in the House now that started at 6 o'clock tonight, and just get people to look at the statement, look at what the Health Secretary said, look at the response from the Shadow Health Secretary, who raised all the questions that we've been sending to him all day from constituents that come in, and some of the interactions in the House, and see that yes, there are issues and questions to be resolved, but the government are doing what they think is the best thing for the country on the evidence they've got in front of it. Everyone should support them on that. And please, 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 just listen to the official advice and follow it. It might be wrong. There might be debates and questions in the future about this, but the official advice is the best advice we're going to get, and just follow it. Might be a Tory government's advice, might be an SNP government's advice in Scotland. Really, it doesn't matter. Just follow it, and we might all be in a better place. And that advice may change as we go along. And the SNP, I could bore you for how long have you got? It depends on my batteries on this. Let's take some first principles here about tackling the SNP. Firstly, let's get to the principle of the Constitution that we care about, because we are internationalists, we care about solidarity, and it's fundamentally part of our DNA. We're no to independence. Why? Because it will be bad for Scotland and bad for the rest of the United Kingdom. And therefore, that's the principle we stand on. Why are we no to a second independence referendum? A, because there's no mandate, 45% still less than 50. And B, why would we facilitate the means if we disagree with the ends? And facilitating an independence referendum may mean that we end up with independence that we disagree with. The last politician to do that was David Cameron, who disagreed with leaving the European Union but facilitated the referendum. The second thing we need to do with the SNP is relentlessly expose how hopeless they've been in government. They've been in government for 14 years come the election in 2021 and just managed decline. Health, education, transport, local government, the economy, social care, young people, universities. The list is endless. Everything has got measurably worse. But the biggest thing we can do as a party is to have something more positive about the future. And that has to be part of the Labour campaign for Britain Future that I want to introduce. Is about a much more positive view of the United Kingdom, but a much more positive view about the future, and a much more positive view about how a future Labour government in Scotland at the UK and at the UK level would be able to determine how the rest of the United Kingdom and power goes closer to the people. The single biggest thing we can do to burst the SNP balloon in Scotland is to have an option of having a credible Labour government at Westminster.
Well,
Which takes us back to where we started.
We've had another question come in from Albie Mills, who's zooming in from, my French isn't that great, but it sounds like Sienne. Sounds French anyway. The question from Albie is, should Labour consider entering in an agreement with the SNP to form a minority government in Hollywood?
I know Albie's on there. I don't know if the camera can go on, but I don't know if she's French or she's from Sheens in my constituency.
Oh, is it Sheens? That's it.
Which is
That's my absolute ignorance. Excuse me, Albie.
But French was very good. You were very good. Most people say sciences.
Science,
but Sheens, yeah. Look,
Sheens, wow.
let's go back to first principle. The simple answer to the question is no. And the reason the simple answer to the question is no is for every single election since the referendum in 2014, all I've been asked, will you do a deal with the SNP or will you do a deal with the Liberal Democrats? And simply, the answer's got to be no. The Labour Party has to have a policy platform, be broad enough a movement to carry the country on their own. And if we don't do that, and we start doing backroom deals before elections and compromising on our policies, then we'll never win. And the SNP do two things in Scotland. They win our seats, and I took the scale of the challenge out earlier. The Labour Party has to start winning seats in Scotland, otherwise we'll never have a Labour Prime Minister again. And B, it damages us in England. Remember Ed Miliband in the pocket of Alexander and Nicola Sturgeon's run up to 2015. I did Andrew Neil 2 weeks ago, and asked me consistently, would we do a deal with SNP in 2024? The ballot boxes are still warm from 2019. This is ridiculous. Do you trust the Liberal Democrats? I certainly don't. They threw the People's Vote campaign under the bus to get an election in December. Then they got what they deserved, because actually the public weren't ready for that, and we could never have had an election before Brexit was out of the way. And they did a deal with the Tories in 2010. Do you trust them? I don't. And people then say, yeah, but they've been doing deals over the country for pro-EU alliance and things. No, they've not. And let me give you 2 examples. The Liberal Democrats stood down in Exeter, not to help Ben Bradshaw as a Labour Party, but because they did a deal with the Liberal Democrats somewhere else. A lot of the parties came together in this Remain alliance in the by-election in North Wales, not to help the Remain cause, but because the 3 parties that came together lost their deposits at the last election, and the Liberal Democrats were always going to win that seat from the Tories. So we just have to stop this narrative of our opponents to say you're going to do deals. Let's win it on our own merit. We've got a policy, an uncompromising policy platform on our own merits, and then go and try and win an election. Otherwise, this is all we'll talk about.
Well, yeah, that sounds, inspires myself, and I think we need to have more fight and talk about how we're going to win and not be doing deals. And I'd like to apologise to Albie for my lack of.
She might be in France, actually, by the way, but I think she's in Edinburgh. Well, I've messed up the gender, you messed up the place, so we're both in trouble.
Yeah, thank you for that, Albie. That was a question. Are there any more, Adam, or anything for yourself? Well, I'd like to thank you for coming down. I'll give you the corner elbow.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much indeed.
But that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, guys.
Sorry,